Good day everyone, welcome to Math with Teacher Justin. On today's topic, we're going to talk about complex numbers and how to simplify complex numbers. Before we proceed to our video, please watch my video on simplifying radicals because this is an important skill on how to simplify complex numbers. Alright, and now on to our video.
A complex number has a form a plus bi. So a and b are real numbers and I is the imaginary unit wherein I is equal to the square root of -1. Let's identify the parts. So a is the real part of the complex number and bi is the imaginary part of the complex number. When b is equal to 0, the complex number is real. When b is not equal to 0 but a is equal to 0, the complex number is a pure imaginary. Now let's have some example. 4 is a real number. I is the imaginary unit. -9i is a pure imaginary number. And 4 minus 9i is a complex number with real and imaginary. So a complex number is a combination of real and imaginary number. Now let's proceed to some examples on simplifying complex numbers. Alright, okay, so for example, we're going to simplify the square root of -49. If we're going to type this in our calculator, the answer will be syntax error or math error because we're going to deal with a negative radicand and we cannot solve this because we will have an imaginary number. Okay, so in this case, if you want to simplify the square root of -49 or if you're going to get the square root of a negative number, we're going to apply simplifying rational. So we're going to factor our radicand. So we can factor this as 7 squared and we factor out the negative factor which is -1. Now we get the square root of each factor, square root of 7 squared and the square root of -1. So the square root of 7 squared is 7 times the square root of -1. Now take note that the square root of -1 is equal to I, therefore we will write I instead of square root of -1. So our final answer will be 7 times I or 7i. So for example, we're going to get the square root of -56. So first is we're going to factor our radicand. So the factors of -56 will be 2 cubed times 7 times -1. Now, since we're going to get the square root of -56, we're going to get the square root of each factor. The square root of 2 cubes will be 2 square root of 2. The square root of 7 will still be square root of 7. And the square root of -1, again, it is equal to I. So, we have I. Let's simplify by multiplying our coefficient by coefficient, radicand by radicand. So, our final answer will be 2i times the square root of 14. Alright. Okay, let's have another example. So, for example, we're going to get square root of -540. So, first is we're going to get the factors of -540. So the factored form will be the square root of 3 cubed times 2 squared times 5 times -1. Now, let's get the square root of each factor. Then, we will have, so the square root of 3 cubes is 3 square root of 3. The square root of 2 squared is 2. And the square root of 5 is square root of 5. And the square root of -1 is equal to, let's multiply the coefficient by the coefficient, radicand by the radicand. So we will have our final answer which is 6i times the square root of 15. Alright, okay, let's have our last example for today. For example, we're going to get the square root of -4800. So first thing that we need to do is to get the factor of our radicand. -4800 has a factor of 5 squared times 2 raised to 6 times 3 times -1. Then we get the square root of each factor. The square root of 5 squared is 5. So the square root of 2 raised to 6 is 2 cubes. The square root of 3 is square root of 3, and so the square root of negative 1 is equal to I. And then from there, let's simplify. We will have 5 times 8 times square root of 3 times I. Let's multiply, and we will have our final answer, which is 40I times square root of 3. Alright.
Now that you already know how to simplify complex numbers, it is your turn to try it. Please click the link in our description box below in order for you to test your skills. That's it for today. Again, I'm Teacher Justin. Goodbye, God bless, and stay safe. See you on my next video. Peace.